Hello, welcome to my channel. This is my Knitter's Life series, season 4, episode 4. Welcome. My name is Shannon. You can find me as Whiskyandwool on Instagram and on Ravelry. I'm really not that active on Instagram lately. It's kind of been for me more of a one-way thing, like where I'm there looking, but I'm not posting, so I'm looking and commenting and liking, but not really posting all that much. I don't know what's happening. That might change. I'm lucky I get one post a week. Sometimes it's a couple weeks before I post anything. I think I'm just really tired of the lack of engagement on things. I should probably just think of it as posting for myself, more for my own memories and stuff. But anyway, I digress. This is, I'm going to talk to you today about knitting. This is a channel about knitting and spinning and about some life stuff that gets tossed in from time to time. I watch other people's podcasts, of course, there's so many. So I recently switched up some of the parameters of my YouTube viewing, and I've been blown away by all the channels that are out there. And there's several people, so many, maybe a dozen or so new channels about knitting. So I really, really appreciate you coming here and checking me out and watching me. If you return week after week or episode after episode, I post about every 2 weeks. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here and for hanging out with me. I really appreciate the back and forth that I engage with some of you in the comments and stuff. I really appreciate that. And I learned so much. I learned a lot from you, and I hope you also learn some things from me. So yeah, I think I mostly just have knitting and spinning this time around. I'm sure you're curious about what I'm wearing and what Martha's wearing. I have finally finished the Stripy Unicorn by Locatelli. That is what I have on. It's a 2-color knit where one of the colors is a Spincycle yarn, which, is a color changing yarn. It doesn't have to be Spincycle, but it obviously, you get some really beautiful effects from a color changing yarn. You could use hand spun if you're a spinner, or there's other Zauser ball. There's other color changing yarns. So I just happen to have this yarn in my stash, although I did end up buying a 3rd skein. So I thought I might have just misread the yardage, but I thought I could do my size with 2 skeins, and I had 2 skeins of this color Deep Bump in my stash. So it's kind of like this sagey blue-green color that goes into gold tones. So I ended up buying a 3rd skein to finish it, and I used almost all of that 3rd skein. So this was pretty much a solid 3 skein dyed in the wool for me in my size. I think I made the size 46-inch bust. It was like size 4 or so, but it's got a really nice, lots of positive ease on me. I like the finished object. I really did not enjoy making this sweater. I struggled with the short rows right from the beginning, right from the get-go, and I don't think I resolved them perfectly. You can really see the stitches and stuff. I ended up going back in and pulling them tighter after I had knit down a little ways, pulling the yarn tighter, because there was something weird about the way the wrap and turns worked. I always do wrap and turn, no matter what the pattern says. So I don't remember what he recommended. Maybe she just said, whatever, use what you want. So, yeah, I always do that no matter what. And because I just really like, generally, you can resolve wrap and turns without seeing any evidence of a short row, which I really, really like. So, yeah, so that was one of the problems that I had with it. The other problem is that I think you can see, like, the lines here, there are probably about 10 times around in the yoke where you were doing increases. And in each spot, so if there are 10 lines, I don't know how many there are, but let's just say there's 10 all the way around, 10 spots where you're doing increases. You weren't doing an increase in each of those spots every single time you were increasing. So sometimes it was like left, right, and then other times it was right, left, right, left. I don't know. It was very, very just not my thing. Like, to have to constantly look at the pattern to see where I'm supposed to increase. I'm sure I messed up. At some point in there. And then you continue. There's 2 lines that continue all the way down the front of the body, where you're always increasing. And to compensate, once you split for the sleeves, you are decreasing along the side seams, along the side of the body. Which that wasn't as hard, because at least it was like every so many rows you do this increase decrease thing to keep your stitch count the same. So that, but still, like, the whole thing, I don't know, I just didn't enjoy. This was not an enjoyable knit for me. It took me a long time too. I cast this on in October, and sorry, I'm like playing with my jewelry and stuff. So I cast this on in October, and I just finished. So it was a 4-month long knit for me, which tells you something. Like, generally, like, if I'm not a monogamous knitter by any stretch of the imagination, I really like to have few options, because I grow bored knitting the same thing, and I would just put it down and pick up my phone or whatever. So instead I put a piece down. If I find that I'm getting bored and I'm stopping knitting and doing other things, I will put the piece away and take another sweater that might be, or another project that might be engaging in a different way and maybe keep me going with knitting. So yeah, this one sat along a lot. And in all fairness, like, 1 month of those 4 months, I was gift knitting, so, because it was December and I was just gift knitting, so I didn't knit on any of my sweaters that were for me, or any projects that were for me over that period of time. But still, like, I was gonna say, like, I can get through a sweater generally, like, doing that sort of put this away, pick this one up, put this one away, put that one, go back to that one. Within 6 weeks, 2 months, I generally can get a sweater done. For myself. So yeah, it was a slog. This project was a slog. I love the results. And I forgot to say, the solid color that I used is British Sport by Les Garçons in the colorway Edith's Butler. It's a BFL Masham mix, 75 BFL, 25 Masham. And I love it. This is the second project I've made with this yarn. I would definitely, this is their sport weight. I would like to try some of the other weights, because they also have it in fingering and DK. So yeah, probably be really, really, really cozy knits or a yarn. Needless to say, like, since I finished this, also blocking it did resolve the weird, like, I was having, like, what you're seeing on Martha, like, where the front is popping up a little bit. This is usually what happens to me, because I have a big bust line for the rest of my measurements. This one, was dipping down in the front and going up on the sides, and I think it was because of the increasing down the center, down the front, not in the center, but like kind of these princess lines, and then decreasing on the side seam. But it all resolved in blocking. That did. So I have a nice even hem all the way around. So I can't complain about that. So be forewarned, if you decide you want to knit this, you might not find it nearly as troublesome. Oh, and the hem, I think the hem also resolved itself pretty well. It was like flaring and acting weird, so I ended up not ripping back this darker stripe that just kind of appeared because of my changing skeins. So yeah, so I ended up, I'm like I said, I've been wearing it. I've probably worn it nearly every day since it came off the blocking mats, and it was done blocking on Tuesday. So that's saying something. I love wearing new sweaters. It's really nice, despite all my sort of complaining about the pattern itself. I mean, the pattern's fine. It's the way it's written is completely fine. As are all of Hohi's. You know, she's a very talented designer and has, yeah. Anyway, so that's Stripy Unicorn by Hohi Locatelli. I think I've told you everything. If not, I'll fix it in editing. Also, like, I don't say this often, but because I just figure, like, if you're watching YouTube channels, you probably already know this, but like down in the description box are all the things, all the information. And if there's something, I'm not perfect, of course, so I don't always remember every single detail, but if there is a detail that you're wondering about, please either ask me in the comments and I'll respond, or you can DM me direct message me on Ravelry or Instagram and I'll respond. What is Martha wearing? So, oh my gosh, I'm so close to finishing this. So this sweater has also been on the needles a really, really long time. I was getting very close to finishing this, and I made myself finish this instead, because I was just like, I could see that I was going to finish this way before I would finish this. So I was just like, put this down, and you know, if I just needed some boring in the round, you know, knitting in the round, because I was working on the sleeves, I picked up this instead. So this is Rumble Raglan by Lydia Morrow. It is my second one. And this one I made with one solid color. It's essentially, so that sweater you could do with 3 yarns, 3 colors, and for most of the sizes you just need 1 skein of each or less, or you could do a 2 color, and I think with that you need 1 skein plus like a little over, like maybe 1.5 skeins for most of the sizes of that. So I decided that it would be a fun experiment, to make a 2-color version, but one of the colors was going to be a bunch of mini skeins that I was arranging in a gradient. So that's what you're looking at here. This is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mini skeins. Actually, it's a little bit more mini skeins. I'll explain in a sec. And one solid color what's kind of a variegated color that was hand spun yarn. I have all of the the little bits of yarn left, but I got down, you know, I knit as far as I could with my like 380 yard skein of hand spun, which is this right here. It's a highly sparkle base that is made from Falkland-Camel and might be silk in there too, I'm not sure. So this is all I have left. So I got down to I was working through these repeats here, and when I got ready to do a new repeat, I could see that there was no way I was going to have enough of this to do a new repeat, so I just decided to stop using it, and I moved to the next color and knit a solid waistband for 3 inches just to get me the length that I think I wanted. So mind you too, this is not blocked, so there will be some growth. I'll probably get another 1/2 inch or so, and it'll be a little bit looser across the bodice as well. 2 of the colors I had more than 1 mini skein. So this was one. I actually had 2 mini skeins that were very close in color. This one here is a little bit, it's more variegated. This is a little bit more solid, and this in its variation, it has both lighter shades and darker shades. So what I ended up doing was just I knit every other row with the mini skeins so that I would end up with like a solid looking piece of fabric, and I think it worked pretty well. I wasn't sure how long I was going to make the waistband. I knew that with 1 mini skein I could knit about, I think the rule of thumb is that, well, for my gauge, or the gauge that or the size that I make, which is always somewhere in that like 40 to 46 inch bust range, I knew I could get about 2 1/4 inches per mini skein. So I figured all in I would maybe go to like a 4-inch waistband, but when I got to 3 inches I felt like that was enough. And the ribbing is in the whole sweater, the ribbing is twisted ribs, half twisted ribs. So you're twisting the knit stitches, but just stitching the purl stitches normally. The other one that I had 2 skeins of was the turquoise, which is actually good because, as you can see, I'm not knitting sleeves. I'm just going to be putting some 1x1 rib trim on the sleeves, on each of the sleeves, so I have a pretty nice chunk of the turquoise left, so I wasn't concerned about that. And then the rest of the mini skeins I pretty much used up. I probably have the next most of this lime green, and then this one, that speckled turquoise that's hanging out in the middle there, I only have a dab left, and the other turquoise I have a little bit more left, but not, not a ton. This was a fun knit. I did enjoy it quite a lot. I just, it took a long time because, again, I took that paused all my projects for gift knitting in in that holiday season. But yeah, it's so pretty. It's gonna look great this spring. It'll be a really fun knit to wear when the weather warms up a little bit more. Here, I'm so close to being done too. I'll probably finish this tonight or by tomorrow, just knitting those, that like an inch or so of rib trim, and then it'll get blocked and it'll be finished. So you'll see this. I'll probably wear it in my next episode, as like you do when you finish stuff. Put it on so everyone can see. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been a really fun knit. I mean, the one thing I would say, to my knowledge, as far as I remember, as I recall, she didn't really tell you. She leaves a lot of things open. So when you're doing your color changes and stuff, she doesn't really tell you where to do that. She has it pretty well spelled out for the 3-color version, but for the 2-color version I couldn't see anything. And maybe it was written, but it wasn't. The 3 colors charted, so maybe she didn't have it written out, as far as or maybe she had it written out, she didn't have it charted, because I would have seen that. But she kind of leaves it up to you to decide when you want to switch up the colors. So I kind of came up with, I had a little bit of a stall at the top because I was trying to figure out what was I going to do. And I ended up just figuring it out and then following it. And yeah, I really like it. I love the way it looks right here, actually. I don't know why. I think it's maybe the higher contrast with a more semi-solid color. It just looks like webbing or something. It looks really cool. And you could actually do the whole thing. You don't have to do these long stretches. You could do whatever you want. It's your sweater. It's your project. But yeah, really fun. And and I mentioned this last time, but what attracted me to this sweater to begin with, besides that it's like, I really love things that are simple but effective. And this is a simple but effective design. And that is always just like genius. Whenever I see it, I'm just like, oh, it's genius. It's like simple but effective. Like, there's nothing complicated about the stitches really, or about the repeat. And you're just doing this, you know, this color work in a way that just is like, wow. So really, really loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. And I was going to say, the other thing that really attracted me to it was that I could use 3 skeins, 3 different colors together in one project. You know, colors that went together, but like the way that so many of the Stephen West shawls are, where you put together 3 to 5 colors that go together, but they're different colors. So it's unusual to find a sweater that has that many, you know, single skeins that, you know, work up into a beautiful sweater that you can wear. So yeah, very, very pleased with that. And Lydia has other patterns that I like, that I have them queued, and I may end up knitting them at some point. But I think you need more solid colors. And I've mentioned this before, I just don't have a lot of solid fingering weight yarn. Sorry, this was fingering weight. I should have mentioned that. I think you could do sport weight too. No problem with this. Yeah, I just don't have a lot of solid fingering weight colors in my stash. So whenever I come across a pattern that is requiring solid yarn, I always end up having to purchase that, because I stocked up on a ton of speckles, or I shouldn't say I stocked up, but I ended up stashing a lot of speckles between like 2016 to 2020. So yeah, you know, that old like, oh, look at this pretty, like when indie dyeing was really becoming like a big, huge thing. And you see this pretty single skein and you're just like, oh, this is great. Let me just take one. Like, I'll put it in a shawl sometime. And then after, like, eventually I had probably nearly close to 100 skeins of fingering weight yarn that were just one skein. I've reduced that significantly over the past few years. I think I'm down to maybe 30 or so. I haven't counted lately. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So yes, I'm trying to reduce my stash. I really, really want to reduce my stash. So I'm highly motivated to do that, and looking for things that will allow me to do that. So all the rest of what you're going to see are patterns that, or projects that I am using yarn from my stash. So the next one is Scottish Check by Marianne Isager. It's from this book, A Knitting Life. And this is about her career as a knitter. Scottish Check looks like this. Let me see if I can show you without showing you the pattern. So yeah, it looks like that. It's just a boxy knit with a drop shoulder. And I have had in my stash for quite some time, since probably Rhinebeck, oops, wrong way, probably Rhinebeck 2017 or so, maybe 2018. I think 2017 though, because I think that was the last Rhinebeck where I went by myself. I think 2019 I had a friend with me. 2018 I had a friend with me. 2019, yeah. So since then I've usually met up with friends. So yeah, I cast this on New Year's Day. I wanted a fresh new project, because I was kind of feeling a lack of motivation with the current projects, this and this, even though I like both of these quite a lot now. But I also just wanted to kind of commemorate 2024 with a brand new cast on. So yeah, this is where I'm at. I have modified the pattern to knit in the round because she has you knit in pieces. There was like this, interesting, like I watched a history of knitting show, which if I can remember in editing, I'll it's on YouTube. I'll post it down below. It was like a presentation that was done during the pandemic about the history of knitting from this one textile historian, and she talked a lot about it. So basically, like, knitting really started around the 10th century, and she talked about the progression and the changes, but she did a couple time leaps, and she didn't really talk about when pieced sweaters became a thing. So I'm not really clear, but I know, like, I'm not really clear when it started, when piecing, like knitting pieces flat. I don't know what, because there was you could circular knit. She talks about circular knitting. And as far as I know, and I might have this wrong, but I remember learning this a long time ago, like Scandinavian countries did a lot more circular knitting than other European countries, as far as I remember. That might not be wrong. I don't have a source because I don't remember where I heard that, but that was something that I remember learning about when I learned about circular knitting in like the 90s. But anyway, so when I first began to knit when I was a teenager, all the patterns were pieced. Like, you knit your front, you knit your back, you knit your sleeves, and then you stitched them all together using mattress stitch or some other method. But anyway, this pattern, Scottish check, kind of harkens back to that period of like 70s, 80s, when people, like, the standard was knitting in pieces. And I don't, like, the historian that I'm talking about did not dive into piece knitting versus like knitting in the round. She did talk about circular knitting. She talked about knitting the dark age, what she called the dark ages of knitting, which was the 70s through the 90s. Which I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, so I was knitting in the dark ages. There was certainly very little innovation happening at that time, I would say. There were a handful of people that were making innovative stuff, but generally stuff was pretty, I was knitting a lot from old patterns, like patterns that had been around for a long time. But I was kind of into that. Like, I liked the vintage look and stuff, so I didn't mind just having some water on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. So yeah, I went ahead, as is my usual method. Like, this is a bottom up knit, and here, let me hold it close so you can see the fabric. It is a bottom up. I'm using two natural sheep colors, natural white and natural black, which natural black is not, of course, black. It's kind of a chocolatey black, and I think you might see that in this light. It looks especially rosy and chocolatey to me. And this is the natural white, and these are from Green Mountain Spinnery. I don't think I have the ball band. I think there's one in here. So let me just pull this out. So Green Mountain Spinnery, their Lana base, which I don't know if they still make it, because I've had this a good long while. I've had this like 6 years. So yeah, Green Mountain Spinnery Lana. It's a 2-ply, 100% fine wool, all made in the U.S. You get 400 yards per skein per 100 grams. And this colorway is called Muy Oscuro, which I think means very dark. And this one's called Blanco. And with the white, you hold a strand of mohair with the white, which makes for super interesting fabric, like, because you're not holding mohair with the dark one, just the white. And yeah, I really, really like it. You get a little subtle halo, and I think this is just going to be so nice to wear. I hope the yarn wears well. I had purchased this yarn with the intention of making a new design. Like I can design hand knit patterns. I do have hand knit patterns for sale in my Ravelry shop. I have not made a new design in a few years. It's something that I just do as a hobby. Like long ago, I was a knitwear designer in a commercial on 7th Avenue, and I was a hand knitter then too, but I was designing knitwear for machines to make, and whatever. It just so that you know, I have some background in that, and I'm perfectly happy knitting other people's patterns if they're satisfying the itch that I have. You know, if I have like an idea of a sweater, I will just go and look for someone else's pattern rather than making it myself, because it takes a lot of effort to design your own, and it's also slower. So like being able to knit someone else has done the math, I'm happy to pay them for that and just knit that. But I probably do a lot of modifications because I'm very confident in how to handle construction. So yeah, and you know, I had a comment. It was actually from a friend of mine, but I had a comment about why didn't I want to do seaming? Could I talk more about seaming versus not seaming? So in the garment industry, in my experience in the garment industry, many of those sweaters were seamed, but it wasn't because I think there's sort of this false equivalency of like, oh, seaming gives you structure. The only time you should seam a knit is when you have to. Like, you have to because of the construction. That's the only time you should seam a knit. Because seaming does not provide structure necessarily, and it can actually introduce structure in a negative way. So if you're making, like, maybe you're doing something in intarsia, like maybe your sweater is intarsia, you probably need to seam it if your intarsia on the front is going to be different than the intarsia on the back, and things aren't really going to match up on the side seams. You probably, or on the side of the body, you would probably want to seam that. That would be a situation to me where it would be like, oh, okay, yeah, you got to seam this. Because otherwise, like, it's just going to be virtually impossible for you to knit in the round with intarsia. Like, if you're knitting in the round with intarsia, you're going like this. You're going around this way, and then you're going back around that way. I could see that would be a case where, to me, you have to seam. Otherwise, you shouldn't seam, I don't think. The only exception I would make for that would be shoulder seams. Like, I do think shoulder seams, like whenever you're knitting where this, you know, you're kind of knitting in a short row method, like because often on shoulders you'll knit across and then you don't knit all the way across, and you slowly, like, these rows get shorter and shorter and you end up with a diagonal. Then seaming would probably give you some stability. But if you're just matching a column of stitches with a column of stitches, yeah, just knit it in the round. So that's kind of my take. That's not kind of, but definitely my take on seaming. Seaming can end up, like, if you've ever worn it, like, probably if you think about t-shirts, after you wash a t-shirt over and over that has side seams, you'll start to see some twisting. That's the kind of negative impact that seaming can have on your hand knits. Because if your tension is slightly off, or, you know, when you were doing the mattress stitch, if you pulled a little tighter in one section, that's going to just make the fabric pull in at that spot. It's introducing all kinds of things that could go wrong. So don't do it. Just why? Don't do it. So yeah, that is why I just why.
Hey, editing me. I just wanted to add, I have a feeling that historically why piecing became a thing was because of resource shortages. Like, I have a feeling it might have something to do with the war. Like, when people's wool was rationed. I think you couldn't, or like, because there was rations on everything, so you could only maybe buy like 2 ounces of wool at a time. So then you could knit, a part of your front instead of trying to do, just a little bit of a sweater that's done in the round. And so I have a feeling that's where the piecing of garments came in, like just based on what I was listening to and listening to that history. Because she makes it very clear that people knit in the round using double-pointed needles, long double-pointed needles, for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then she never mentioned the piecing factor. But I know when I was learning to knit and I was looking at vintage patterns, everything was pieced. And the vintage patterns did not go back further than World War II. Like they were like basically 50s, 60s, and 70s. So yeah, take that for whatever it's worth. Hope that is helpful, and check out her video because it's cool.
But you knit what you want. I'm not judgmental. I have friends who knit and seam, and they don't seem to mind it. They think it works. And now that I've said that, there is a piece that I'm thinking about making that has a lot of piecing, a lot of seaming. I don't know. We'll see. I've set the yarn aside because project planning is something that I love more than anything. Because who doesn't? I would like to project. This is like how I operated as a designer. I planned a project and gave the materials list and spec to someone else, and they made the piece. So when you have a team of people making your pieces, you can make a lot of pieces in a week. So it was like that. I'm used to that sort of when I'm making things, like I'm used to that fast pace where I like, and look at this. And so there's always this like constant back and forth of like where you're scheming and you have these ideas, and then you're getting this instant gratification of like, or this instant feedback of, oh, wow, that worked, or gotta redo that. And then you can, fix things and send them back out to have them redone by someone else. So that's like one of the advantages of working for a big commercial firm. That's what they do. So yeah, I'm always project planning, but I'm not always making the things that I've planned. Not always necessarily making those. So anyway, back to Scottish check. Really enjoying this. It's mosaic knitting, the stitch pattern. So you're just knitting one color a row. And like most mosaic knitting, you actually knit 2 rows with one color, and then you knit 2 rows with the other color, and just swapping out every 2 rows. So knitting in the round is pretty simple. You're just on this particular pattern, when I would be like, especially with this black line, it's a garter ridge. So you would knit. If you were knitting flat, you'd knit and then you'd knit the other way. But when you're knitting in the round, you're knitting around and then purling around to get that garter ridge. So yeah, that is that pattern. I am pretty close to where I will split to knit the front and then knit the back flat. So it's drop shoulder, so I'll get to like here, this part of the body, and then I'll knit the front flat, and then I'll knit the back flat, and then there'll be a shoulder seam across the top. And then drops shoulder sleeves. So yeah, this should be, now that like I was a little uncomfortable having 4 sweaters on the needle. So I'm down to 3, 4 with this. This will quickly be off, and then I'm just gonna have 3 because that's a little bit more comfortable quantity for me. That pattern, Scottish check, is very easy to knit. You can just, for me anyway, like it's easily memorizable, and you can, once you learn the pattern, you can read your knitting and you know what to do the next row. So it's really simple. I don't have to pay a lot of attention to it as I'm knitting it. So that's like a great I like to have one, at least one, that I can knit in that way without really thinking too much. And this next one is also like that now that I'm past all of the, shoulder shaping and everything, and I'm knitting on the body on a top down. This is the Milton sweater by Joji Locatelli. I shared this last time 2 weeks ago. I haven't done a whole lot of knitting on it, but I have to share it again because it's just so pretty. So I am making the Milton by Joji Locatelli, which is a cousin to her Elton sweater. I am in the middle of a round. So showing you, okay, so there you go. That's the front. There's the front. And here are the sleeves. The sleeves will go here. There's an armhole. And the other armhole has this beautiful little shawl collar that you're knitting as you go. You start out knitting the shawl collar like a rectangle, basically, like right in the back. It's very much like making a crescent, a big crescent for a crescent shawl, like where you knit that little tab and then you're starting to add everything. It's similar to that, I found anyway. But yeah, you do this really cute shawl collar in a 3x1 rib pattern, and now I'm just knitting back and forth. It's knit flat once you get to this point. Actually, the whole thing is knit flat. I shouldn't say once you get to that point. Maybe the sleeves are knitting around. I haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, you just knit around, purl around, knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row, and I'm knitting the whole body in one piece. And it's alternating 4 rows of a sport weight with 4 rows of lace mohair. I'm using a hand spun for my sport weight in the colorway. It is a colorway called Beach Rainbow, and I spun it in such a way that it would go in rainbow order. Although this wasn't a pure rainbow, it has it's called Beach Rainbow. Actually, it has a lot of there was like a sand color, because it's beach color, sandy color that was sort of consistent through each of the colors. The fiber is from Green Goat Ranch. It's her Rambouillet base that I love it so much. I spun this was from my fiber countdown calendar from 2022, from Christmas 2022, and I spun it that January. So I just put it aside for the perfect project, and here we are. So it's not like perfect Roy G. Biv, but it is like kind of a nice rainbow order. Like I'm kind of getting a rainbow vibe. It definitely has, because again, it's beach rainbow, so it has a lot of that turquoisey, green, blue shades in it. This is the second skein I cast on actually with another skein, and so I made 3 skeins out of this fiber. I don't feel like I'm explaining this as well as I did last time, but I made 3 skeins out of the fiber. They all went in the same order. And this is the second skein. I used the first skein to do this shawl collar tab, and then the right front. I knit the right front, and then after you do the right front, then you do the back, then you do the left front, and then you start knitting the whole body. You close up the armholes and knit the whole body. So I joined this skein beginning here in this section, so in this back section. And then went over here, and now it should be a continuation. Like on this side it'll be a continuation, but I think it's also looking fine on the other side. But my fronts, as you can see, do not match. Like they're not a perfect color match, but they're pretty good, right? They're not too far off. I mean, they go they go together. They're just not a perfect match, but I'm here for it. I'm totally fine with it. So I'm very excited to see what happens with the rest of the skein, because I have no idea other than what you're seeing right there. No idea. We'll see what happens. I did not knit a whole lot on this. I probably put in like maybe 4 stripes, because the last time I showed you I had just closed up the armhole, so I put in these rounds here because I was trying so hard to get these other sweaters off the needles, just to like reduce the number of projects that I have. But this is like very addictive because of the striping. Although I really hate knitting the mohair rounds. Like, oh, it's very slippy. I have to go slow. That's the only reason why I don't like it, but it's fine. Like, the result is, you know, sometimes you have to go through a little pain to get some good results. This sweater too. So yeah, that's where that is. And I have one more continuing whip I want to share with you. Boy, I'm talking chatty today. Hope you don't mind. Hope you're here for it. I'm still working away on this little Manhattan hat for my granddaughter Julie. This is matching a sweater that I recently finished for her. I think you saw it last episode if you were here. If it's your first time, you can go back and watch the last episode if you like, and see the sweater. But I'm just using up the last bits of this yarn. This is very old stash. It is a here we go, fingering weight, some old stash from Garn Story, and then a strand of Siri lace from Lavender Loon in the colorway Tender, which these have been in my stash for at least 5 years, and I was really delighted to figure out that they go together and they would work up into a really beautiful sweater and hat for my granddaughter Julie. She's 3 years old, and she's talking up a storm, and she already received her sweater and she loves it, and she remembered I have a sweater. I have made a daily pullover in very similar colors. I used La Bien Aimée. I made it last year maybe, or the year before. I used La Bien Aimée, Helix and Felix. No, Helix and Kumo. Helix and Kumo. So lace, Helix, and Kumo in the same color, and they were similar. I think her colorway is called Wisteria, so it was very similar to this yarn here, this color. So I was wearing that sweater over the holidays, and she just loved it. She loved like petting it and stuff. And at that time, I was working on her sweater, and yes, I told my son, her dad, I was just like, she's just gonna love this because it's exactly very similar to my sweater. And so she said when she got it, she's like, oh, it's like grandma's sweater. So she remembered. It was really cute. Adorable. So she doesn't know the hat's coming, but it's just like, I like to have one small project that I can carry around. So I carry it in this very old Jezebel bee bag that is really designed for slipping on your arm and knitting while you walk or stand. So I usually just keep a small project in this bag that I can throw into my purse or into my work bag and knit on in meetings, or when I'm walking around, or when I need a few moments, a breather. That this works really, really well. So yeah, I have the hat here, and then when this hat is done, I have a couple other small projects in mind that'll be coming up soon, and I'll talk to you about them when I get there. I don't like to get too far ahead of myself. I have a new cast on, so I had told you I wouldn't have cast this on yet. I would have waited till I finished this, but it was my birthday on Friday, so I wanted to do a birthday cast on, and I actually have yarn and plans for 3 different cast-ons, and so I was faced with choosing one. So I decided to go with this one. I talked about this, I teased about this sweater a while back, probably in my episode 1 of this season. I talked about wanting to, because again, I was like kind of in project planning mode. So I talked about wanting to knit this sweater. This is a sweater that is going to use up all of my single skeins of Spincycle. So because I have I have about 10 single skeins, and I have many little dribs and drabs, partial skeins of Spincycle from leftover Spincycle. So this is going to use up a lot of that. I don't know if it's going to use it all up, but it's going to use up a lot of it. It is called I want to make sure I'm saying it right. It's an Italian name, Chiaroscuro by Carol Sunday. And I have a little, I'll show you the process of me working through how I was going to, what I was going to do. So I'm going to let you watch that clip, and then I'll see you back here. Carol made one using all the same color of Spincycle, Ghost Ranch, which is what this one and this one are. And she made, the sweaters worked in a gradient. So you start with your lightest colors and work down to your darkest at the very bottom of the sweater. And it seems like it's very forgiving. She actually has it written up so that you could use a bunch of mini skeins if you wanted in a gradient way. Like, it's basically like 18 colors. So it's pretty, there's a lot of options. It sounds like it's pretty forgiving in terms of the colors. And what she recommended with her Spincycle, what she did with her Spincycle was to divide each ball in two, or perhaps even three if there's a lot of color variation. And then figure out, like this one, I can't see the point of dividing that. It's pretty good. And then from there, like, just start with your very lightest color, which for me, I think will be this one. And your two lightest colors that will also contrast with each other. And she said she just kind of pulled out whatever color felt good to her. So, my first thing right now is to just make sure I'm getting some high contrast. So I basically have, 2 skeins of Ghost Ranch. This is, I believe this is Rusted Rainbow. This is Siren Song, which is the unique colorway for the Mermaid's Pearl in Rhode Island. This is Sugar Rush. This is Stay Out of the Forest. Cold Comfort. And I think this one is Cassiopeia, which is a unique Spincycle color for Ritual Dyes out in Portland, Oregon. This is leftover. These two actually are leftover from a sweater this one too, from sweaters that I made using those colors. The rest of these 5 were ones that I got in a mystery skein package. I do have 2 more skeins. I thought I was going to use up all of my Spincycle. I do have 2 more skeins. One is a very ugly gray skein that is going to end up in a scrap blanket because I really don't like it, so it's just going to go in that. And I do have 1 more skein of this, so if I need it, I can pull that in. So here is what I think I'm going to do. I am going to follow the directions and split the skeins to just give me more color options. And although the first thing I'm going to do is swatch. And just so that you understand what's happening here with this one, Siren Song, I did pull apart one of the skeins. I was doing some color management with whatever it was I was making last with this colorway. So that is what's going on there. I'll get back to you with the swatch and maybe even show you the cast on. Anyway, I'm back with, you're back after that clip. Here is the swatch that I made. Now, these are not colors that I would put together necessarily. I actually took colors that I didn't like all that much and knit them into the swatch, but this is how it swatched up. And I have here, I pretty much divided most of them. So here are all my little dribs and drabs of, that's Ghost Ranch, of the colors. This is a partial skein that I've had. This is the one that makes into a rainbow, which I've used a couple times in sweaters. Figured I'd work that in somewhere. This is the color from Ritual Dye, the Cassiopeia, I think it's called. Stay Out of the Forest. So I divided pretty much all of them. And I cast on Friday. I'll show you what I have so far. I've worked this sweater, wow. Like, okay, let me not talk about the pattern first. Let me show you first what it looks like. So this is what I have so far. This pattern has you do a provisional cast on. So what you're seeing, this green thread is my crochet chain that I used for the provisional cast on. And then what Carol has you do is work the back rows while you're doing color work, or work the short rows while you're doing color work and doing raglan increases. So you're doing all of that at the same time. So I just recently, this is the front right here, I just recently knit a couple rows across the front. So I finally finished the short rows. So this entire section here, this is the back. That's how deep the short row back neck is compared to the front. And the other thing, so I'm a little concerned, it seems like a really, really wide neck. I mean, I have it on a 20-inch needle, but you can see how much excess there is. But when I look at the pattern on the model and on some other people that have made it, it looks fine. So, I mean, it's provisional, so that does give me some opportunity to go back and kind of fudge what's happening to pull the neck in if I want it to be pulled in at that point. So I'll figure that out after I get through, more of the sweater itself. So far I've only knit with 2 colors, but I recently just switched and put in this pink. So what's interesting with Spincycle, of course, it's color changing. So and like I said in the clip, like Carol Sunday said, she has kind of felt her way through her all Spincycle piece and just kind of looked in her bag and pulled out whatever one looked like it was good to go next. And she does give you, I don't want to show you the pattern per se, but she does give you like, I don't think this is giving too much away. She does give you see these lines, she tells you where on the chart to change color and what, and she calls all the colors, like there are 17 colors and she tells you how to integrate them so that you end up with this really nice gradient kind of layout of your colors. So I didn't label all my colors, but I am trying to pay attention to switching up where you should switch up on the colors. And I probably should have switched up, but I'm doing short rows so I didn't really want to switch it there. So I found my place on that chart and now have started to switch. The funny thing is this color here, this gold, is actually the same as the light background that you're seeing here, this like very pale lemony color. It's the same skein. So when I got to, I'm starting a second motif. There's 2 motifs in the sweater. So like one motif and then you do the next motif and then you go back to the same motif. So it's these 2 motifs that sort of repeat themselves through the whole sweater. So I started the second motif, and instead of swapping this out, because it literally changed like maybe half a round before that motif change was coming, it switched over to this deeper gold. I instead took out this gray grello kind of skein that was happening here. I took that out and attached this. This is Cold Comfort from Spincycle. I attached this pink shade, so now we'll have pink and gold for several rounds, and then I'll change up one of them again, probably this one, into something else. So yeah, this is gonna be an adventure. So excited to get those Spincycle yarns out of my stash. I had been collecting them for a while, a skein here, a skein there, because I learned that they make really interesting color work. But I had bought a couple mystery packs a couple years ago during the pandemic, I think, like maybe in 2021 or so, 2020, 2021, when they started to do their mystery skein packs. And I bought 2 of them, and I ended up with some colors that I didn't love, but they're going to be fine in a sweater like this. So I'm using a lot of them. This is actually one. I don't love this, but it's going to be fine here in this sweater. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So this has been fun. I will make myself put it down so I can finish this piece. And then I'll just have these 3 sweaters and just, change up, kind of integrate in the other sweaters that I have in my project planning queue. I have some spinning to share with you. And I also have some new stash to share with you because I treated myself for my birthday. I got a sweaters quantity. But let me show you the spinning first before I show you the yarn, and some of the stash is related to spinning. So I finished up, I think earlier this year, I showed you, because I bought this fleece when Olann was going on her latest hiatus, so she did a little sale. So I bought, it was mystery fleece. I had no idea what I was getting, but it is fine merino, I think, but really pretty. So I had spun one skein, this lighter skein I had spun. I don't actually think they're fine. They're probably very similar. It might just be the way I've twisted them together, but one is very definitely lighter than the other in the way that I have them skeined up right now. So I had finished this lighter skein earlier this year, and I went, dove back into finishing up this spin. So I have about, I think it's around 550 yards of a 3-ply. I just did a 3-ply, spin with this expectation that I would get something close to DK, which is pretty much what it is. It's kind of in that sport to DK range. Really, really soft, beautiful, beautiful yarn. No plans for what I'm going to do with this. So this will just go in my stash, but it could make a really lovely something down the road. Maybe for Julie, who knows. So that's some spinning. And then I dipped back into this spin that I started, I want to say late last summer. I experimented with spinning spinning from the fold, which means if you're not a spinner, I have some fleece here. So if you're not a spinner, usually you're pulling from the tips, but instead with this fleece, this is from John Arbin. Here it is. It's this colorway called, they do specials, one-off kind of specials every year, in June, for their anniversary. So this was their 2023 special called Welly Boot, and the collection was called Down the Allotment. And it's a 33% merino, 33% BFL, and 33% Jacob blend. And this is what the fiber looks like. Well, it comes in it's comb top, machine comb top from their mill. And they use the comb top to make yarn, but they also sell their comb top. Pretty much every color in a lot of the yarns, they sell comb top. So it comes in this really big, long stretch. And when you want to spin from the fold, you end up making pieces from that very long thing. And then spinning from the fold is literally you hold it over your finger like this, and you pull out the strands this way. And the reason that I chose to spin this way, spin from the fold, this fleece, is because there's all these really pretty colors that could blend into a beautiful heather, but I wanted to try and see if I would get longer stretches of color instead of a heather. And so this was a skein that I finished. So you could see some blue there and some pink. The green kind of got more blendy, but that was the impetus behind spinning from the fold. So I it was my first time spinning from the fold, so I tried it and made one skein, and then the other, it's 400 grams, so 4 skeins. The other 3 skeins have been sitting. So I have revisited it, and I now have, it's a 2-ply, so I now have bobbins ready to be plied, and I'm just going to do all the bobbins. You can kind of get an idea from fleece to single ply. And you can see the lines there to 2-ply. So that's the progression of this spin. So I have these 2 bobbins, I have another 2 bobbins, and then I've got 2 bobbins to go. And then I'll do some plying, and this spin will be finished. So also feels really good to get these old spin projects done. And then I can move on to some other spins. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my fiber stash and why am I purchasing more fiber? Why not spin what I have? And then when it's time for me to plan a spin project, I'm not really inspired by some of the stash I have. So, and then part of it is because I think I got some of the stash. I got some as mystery stash, so I didn't really know what I was getting, but also because like you can save money by doing that, right? Like if you're willing to take someone's mystery stash, you're gonna pay less because they get to reduce their inventory and get some money for it, and you get a little bit of a discount. So some of it is that, but also, and some of it is club, like some club colors, which you don't really know what you're getting with a club color. But what I've realized is that I probably have 7 or 8 batches of fiber that I'm not going to spin, that I'm just not going to spin because I'm just not inspired. Like they're not colors I want to wear or work with. So anyway, long story short, I think I'm gonna do some destashing. I'm gonna try on I'll try to set them up before I publish this video or right around when I publish this video. So if this video goes out and you're interested in looking at what I'm going to be selling in Ravelry, I'll do it through Ravelry for purposes of this, and I'll see what happens. But I have I'm going to try Reddit, actually, the hand spinning Reddit over there to sell it that way. If I don't sell it all. But they're going to be priced very well because I just need to make room. I was looking through and I was just like, I'm not interested in spinning this. Like if I had nothing else to spin, I would spin them, but I have plenty of other things that I'm excited about spinning wise, including this next stuff. So I bought this is new fiber, new roving I bought from Kim Dyes Yarn. I purchased rainbow braids. I mean, I just had to. Please. I have no idea how it's going to spin up. I'm going to probably do fractal, where you kind of make the braid, you tear the braid in different, I'll talk about it when I do it. But anyway, because this is getting overly long. But yeah, so pretty. I really, really love it. And I got 2 4-ounce braids. So that should be some really beautiful, rainbowy, bright shades that will be so fun to work with, and both in spinning and knitting. So I splurged on some yarn. This was actually going to be the yarn that I was going to use for my birthday cast on, because I really thought the one that I showed you as my birthday cast on would have been cast on by then. I didn't anticipate how long it took me to finish this and this sweater, and I really didn't want to cast on anything until these 2 were finished. So I bought this yarn thinking that I would do a birthday cast on. I splurged with Lamb and Kid. I bought some Todd worsted, and Todd is a yak cashmere blend. I made a birthday cast on using the Todd DK last year, and I freaking love that sweater. It is so soft and cozy. It is just the most comfortable thing. So I went ahead and purchased this like very beigey neutral, and I had this idea that I was going to make Lamb & Kids varsity sweater, which I'll show you a picture here of what it looks like. But I have since changed my mind. I'm not going to make that sweater, even though I think it's fine. It's a great sweater. I love the pops of stripe on the sleeves. I was thinking I would put a pop of stripes across the chest as well. But another pattern came out that I was like, ooh, that. And I realized quickly that this yarn would be perfect for it. And yeah, I want to make it. I didn't cast it on this past weekend because it's a lace chart. It's lace knitting. It is called the Gym Sweater. So I purchased the pattern because she was doing a promo. And yeah, I've really loved it. It's beautiful. It is right up my alley, and I think it's going to look great in this Lamb & Kid cashmere yak yarn. And I have enough. I have enough of the yarn. I think that pattern, that pattern is made from a sport, and she's using a mohair, I think, held double. Sport weight and mohair. But this is it's basically worsted, so she says, or any other worsted. But yeah, I'll talk to you more about the other projects when I get ready to do them. But I'm going to leave you here. Do I have any? Oh, I do have a little lifestyle stuff. I installed a ceiling fan this weekend in my bathroom. Little tiny caged ceiling fan, which I'll pop a clip in here so you can see it. It was, it's super satisfying to be able to do those things for yourself. And it was a little trial and error. Surprisingly, that ceiling fixture was modernized. That was the only one in this whole apartment where the ceiling fixture had been modernized, and the wires that were coming out of the ceiling were normal sized. Like all the other wires for all the other ceiling fixtures were like these big fat wires, like a size of wire that we don't use anymore. So that made it a little easier, but the more difficult part was anchoring it, because it is a ceiling fan, so you have to be able to anchor it to the ceiling. So when I first anchored it, I didn't use the sheetrock anchors that you need to use when you're screwing something into sheetrock directly. So I had to take it down and then go back, and because I wasn't sure, this whole apartment, like nothing makes sense because it's all old construction. So they don't, like, there's not the standardization that they have now. Like now, there's a stud every 12 inches. But in this place, like sometimes studs were 6 inches apart, and sometimes they were 8 inches, and sometimes they were 10 inches, and sometimes 12 inches. Like you never knew. So because I never knew, or I didn't know what I was dealing with when I was putting it up, I just went ahead and tried to use wood screws, and I hit wood with one, but the other 3 did not hit wood. So I had to take it back down and anchor it and stuff. But it looks great. The only drawback, and that was the delivery that I got, was that I had everything. They gave me the light bulbs and everything. Everything was in the package except a battery for the remote, because it is remote operated. And without the battery, I can't turn the fan on. I can only turn the light on. So I ordered a battery, and it's here. It has it's one of those disc batteries, so it's not batteries that I would have on hand. So those batteries were delivered, so I can now try out the fan and see how it works. But I've just had so much fun. My next thing in house work will be having the kitchen redone, so that'll happen sometime next year. But my first step is to talk with a designer, so that'll happen probably by June or so. I'm gonna find a designer that I vibe with and start working with them. And then it's finding a company to actually do the work and lining that all up. But I think it'll happen sometime around this time of year next year. is what I'm aiming for, but if it ends up being later, that's fine too. Later in the year. But yeah, that's where I'm at. There might be other little clips, I don't know. I'm sure there'll be plenty of cats. I took a lot of clips of cats and city views, so my neighborhood and such. So happy, right? So I hope you're enjoying yourself and enjoying your projects and your knitting, and I hope you found some inspiration here, or in some way, shape, or form. I look forward to talking with you in the comments down below, and I will see you again in a couple weeks. Bye.